This fall, the Virginia Annual Conference launches a new web series, Wesleyan Ways, Exploring Our Methodist Roots. Using Jim Harnish's book, The Journey to the Center of the Faith, as our framework, we will explore what it means to be United Methodist. Jim, I was just telling Bishop Sue that you sounded a little surprised when I called and said, "Hey, we wanted to use Journey to the Center of Faith as our frame for this."
Yeah, when I looked it up, it's 24 years old. Unbelievable to me. I can't believe it's been that many years. But when I went back through it, I said, "Hey, this is pretty good stuff."
It is. I mean, I kind of set this up for you for the last year. And one thing I love about Virginia, and kudos to the Virginia Annual Conference, they are always asking me, what are we going to study this year? What are we going to, a long history of informed, and I think an opportunity for us because ever since I've been in this work, I've been stunned at the failure of the teaching office of the church. The first year we focused on uh, means of grace, spiritual disciplines. How do I have a rule of life? And here's a shameless plug to anybody listening to this. Those are all complete now. All the webinars that we did on that are complete. So you can take a group, get Marjorie Thompson's Soul Feast, and just work through each. We took one practice a month. So that is completely available if you want to, if you're playing catch up. That's what we did the first year. This year, our focus is on our unique identity as Wesleyan Methodists, and what were the emphases, and to draw inspiration from the early Methodists who really weren't in the least concerned about building a church, but were desperately concerned about the people who the church was not reaching and who Christ has called us to serve. So that kind of is the framework for year two. And what I loved about Journey to the Center of the Faith and your book is you just distill down in a, how many are there, Jason? 12 or so?
Well,
But
yep.
because we've got a 12-month framework, and so you distill down, well, this is the skeleton on which all of our theology hangs. And so I'm really delighted to have you with us because you've I your first Sunday at Hyde Park United Methodist in Tampa was my last Sunday. And you did a yeoman's task of changing that, and it's the best example I've ever seen of changing a church that really did not have a Methodist identity. It was more conservative Baptist with a bunch of folks thrown in, and shaping it. And you see where that church is today. It transforms a church when it understands its identity, and everybody is formed in the same way and on the same page. So that's kind of the year two layout.
Sounds exciting to me. I'm grateful to have been there when you left.
Yeah, you didn't want me around.
To have that to have that close link,
Yeah.
and I appreciate. I'm amazed at where that church has moved and where we went over the years. And one word of that is that although you're absolutely correct, the controlling hands of the church were in the hands of folks who were not Methodists rooted in their faith.
Yeah.
But the core, at the heart of that church, was this deep, long, vibrant Wesleyan commitment.
Hmm.
And when we tapped into that, that
Claim it.
was what. So all I can take credit for is being the guy who tried to steer the ship into its roots.
Hmm.
Bad mixture of analogy there. Tried to steer into the center of the course, and that is how where the book developed. I mean,
Yeah.
it really came out of our together our wrestling with what does it mean for us to be a United Methodist Church in this place at this time.
Hmm.
How do we grow out of the roots of our tradition in a way that really can try to make a difference in the lives of people today. So when I'm looking back through the book, it brought back deep memories of the people and the times that we really dug in and wrestled
Mhm,
with that and asked hard questions. And
mhm,
they were a congregation of the leadership that we that emerged there were people that were really willing to do the hard work of getting their hands around who God had called them to be in the past,
mhm.
but who God was calling them to be in the present and now, all these years later, into the future. And
Mhm.
so it's been an exciting opportunity for me to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And as
Well,
you
and
clear,
I think most churches have some laity who have that kind of core conviction. And sometimes they just have gotten fed up or moved to the periphery. And but I think too most churches have solid pastors that they can look back and say, there was something about him or her that really was grounded in Methodism, and let's draw on that. But I do think it's important to discern as the leaders of the church who are your core leaders, and are they spiritually mature? Do they have a depth? And that's why we started with having a rule of life and the means of grace, because I said in a sermon, and I was serious, if you're not spending 30 minutes alone a day with God, don't say anything in your church council meeting, right? Who are you speaking for?
that would be a good rule.
you know I'm just gonna like say what Sue thinks, which is seldom aligned with what God thinks.
Yeah, so each month there'll be a new video based on one or two of the chapters from Jim Harnish's book, Journey to the Center of Faith, and they'll be released every second Monday starting in September with a discussion guide as well. So you can join live, like with a watch party in your church, and then use the discussion guide afterwards, or you can have access to that resource at any time to use in your Bible study, leadership meeting, Sunday school classes, choir meetings, whatever you want to use it, and have that resource available. In addition to that, we're also going to be creating a library of resources to go along with our theme of Wesleyan Ways, exploring our Methodist roots.
Great. Yeah, I think that too, the Soul Feast taught us that there is a need for a rhythm, right? I think we all need a monthly rhythm, a way to look at things. So yeah, if you do it with your spiritual accountability group, or one person who you deal, I have one friend and we'll work through a book together. But I
Mhm.
think this is just something that's really accessible for every church and for every group. And invite a couple of non-church members, right? I found that people are hungry now to learn about communities of grace, communities of compassion. And a lot of people are looking for ways to be at work in the world in positive and life-giving ways, because everything around us is so negative and death march, so
So, Bishop, what would you say your hope is for the Virginia Conference over the next year?
right. I hope that with Jim's guidance and with the great topical, the reminders of who we are, I'm hoping that we can reclaim a deep Methodist identity, an identity that pushes us beyond our walls, because the third year is about, okay, how do we take our church beyond its walls? How do we imitate these early Methodists? How do we risk being as Ashley Bogan says, vile? But how do I don't know, Jim, if you watch Poldark, but boy, the Methodists, when they came, the Methodese, they were working class, they were loud, they were a force in the community, and the Anglican rector was just mortified at these people. So how do we really courageously challenge the status quo and really make sure that Christ is made real? Oh, there we go back to Hyde Park, right? Making God's love real in the lives of every person, right? And so the notion that you could lock people up, whether they're American or not, in a place called Alligator Alcatraz, that is not a Methodist. If you have any Methodist inclination in you, every fiber of your being should be screaming So how do we restore who we are and go with one purpose and one mind? And I'm tired of fighting each other. We need to really be on the same team, and we need to have we have a common genealogy. So how do we live into that? That's my hope.
And really, what the book came out of was not an argumentative place, but out of a place to say positively, this is who we are.
Right. Well,
And
yeah.
that I think the best way to counter the negative is with a strong positive,
Hmm.
strong affirmation, and a joyful spirit, and that. So yeah, that really goes to the root of where these themes in the book came from.
Hmm.
They really were the conversations that we were having, but then moving to, well, then what is the good news that we have to announce or proclaim? And I really feel strongly about that we don't have to fight every fight. We just declare what we know to be true. And yeah, I think that.
Well, I'll go back in the late 90s, Jim, and I really appreciate you being there in my life just to be wise and to say, yeah, you're in a church that's very conflicted, this I have carried with me all these years. You said focus on the positive and the negative will die on the vine. Let it atrophy and let it fall away. And that is true. And I think that's why Paul says, whatever is good and worthy of praise, think on these things. Because if you get caught up in the negative and the ugly, you're never going to go anywhere. And so let the negative die on the vine. Be relentlessly positive and relentlessly joyous. And nasty people don't like relentlessly joyous people. I still remember a lawyer I practiced law with. He's the most negative person I ever saw. But boy, when I was on the elevator with him, I made him crazy because I'd be, hey, how are you? And I was like, so yeah. Hmm.
Well, that feels like a good place to end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Relentlessly positive.
yeah.
I loved it when I'd hear people talk about whatever church I served in the community. I said, man, it is a happy and joyous place. And I'm like, that is 90% of the battle because um, there just aren't that many happy and joyous places now. So,
You bet. Yeah. And and I hope that comes through even in the themes,
hmm.
because most of these themes are a little bit expanded, but they were the the core identity that we were defining for that church.
Hmm. And they're very, I mean, I think for any United Methodist Church, that's
Yeah,
our identity. So, yeah.
yeah. So I hope I'm glad it makes that kind of contribution. And I did look, Amazon actually still has it listed. I
Uh-huh.
As much as I try to resist, but now Abingdon doesn't. I went on the Abingdon site and they don't even list it anymore.
Well,
So,
maybe we can like ask all pastors to look at their bookshelves and we'll create an archival room of them and
yeah,
have them. But I do think what we're trying to do is just take your basic ideas and then repopulate, maybe update a little bit, but a lot of it is ageless and a lot of it, I mean, there's nothing new about Jesus's basic teachings and nothing new about Wesley's basic teachings. And to me that I mean, nothing gives me more joy than to sit in a a Methodist church in England or a Methodist church anywhere in the world and still hear these basic frameworks discussed. So I think that these are timeless things and the core of the faith. So Jim, thank you um, for many years of speaking
uh,
speaking sanity into insanity. And because I mean, let's face it, and I'm just going to name it. As a pastor, there are many days you feel like I'm just in a world of insanity, and one person can ruin your life for a season. And so take heart, anybody listening to this, that there is a better way. And you know what? If you have nobody who resembles Christ in your church, go have coffee every day in the Starbucks and ask God to send you somebody to talk to, and that'll work too. So sometimes, I've served churches where I said our biggest chance at success is getting more new people than old people. because we've got to fundamentally change the DNA of this place. So, yeah.
Our first episode will be released on Monday, September 8th at noon. The episode and discussion guide can be found at www.vaumc.org/Wesleyan Ways.